Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. I need you guys to smash that like button to extend that S even further. If you don't know me, I'm Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. We train over 1 million producers around the world, so I'm going to work with Drake, Kanye West, Post Malone, Ariana Grande, French Montana, Young Thug, Polo G, Lil Baby, Trippie Redd, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, and a long list of other folks. What we're going to get into today is showing you how to use the FL Studio 2024 mixer. So basically you can do stuff like this. So here I have a session. I can turn off all the vocals at once. I can turn off the drums. I can turn off the bass. All right, so this is what you guys can do and when you organize your mixer. So the first thing you want to do is send stuff to the mixer. So whenever you have a new sound, you can go to the channel rack, switch this to all, and you'll see everything with these numbers on the left side. If you don't see those numbers, hit Alt plus M to hide or reveal these numbers. These numbers correlate to sending these sounds to the mixer. The mixer is where stuff is either separated or combined. In short, by default, FL Studio routes everything to the master channel, which is when this is like a flat line like this, it goes to the master. It even tells you in the top left, the target is the master. Now, once you start adding numbers, these go to the mixer channels in the mixer. So if it doesn't have a number, it looks like this. What you could do is highlight the sound or highlight multiple sounds, just left click and drag, and then hit Control L, and it will assign it to a blank mixer channel. Okay, and not only that, but it will name it whatever the sound's name is as well. So it saves a lot of time routing stuff to the mixer. Next, I'm going to show you guys how to create groups. So let's say you want to group all these vocals onto another track. So I have background vocals, hook vocals, etc., etc. Now what I'll do here is, we used to have to do this. We used to control left click and drag to highlight multiple tracks. We used to have to right click, route to this track only. Now all these tracks are going to here. Then we would have to rename it. Just right click, hit R to rename, or just hit shift left click. We would have to rename it something, and then we would have to colorize it. So you have to do all these steps. So instead of doing all these steps, you know, this is the old way of doing it. You could right click, hit E to reset everything. That will take off all the plugins and strip the name and restore the velocity and the fader for you. I should say the levels for you. Everything's still routed to this track though. So we're going to reroute this back over here to show you guys how to create what are called groups. So again, if you have similar instruments, you know, drums, bass, whatever the thing is, you want to group those together, highlight them, hit Control, left click and highlight. We are going to also click on the track that we want to land on. It's a little confusing because you have to be on the track that you're actually trying to land on. So this is a little confusing. But what you could do is right click on the track that you would like to group and then go down to where it says create group. Now you have to do this on an empty mixer channel. Okay, so if I have all these vocals right here, if I want a vocal group, I need to make sure that there's an empty channel. So the empty channel here is channel number 1. Make sure there's an empty channel. If you don't do this, it will do it not the same way. Highlight all your tracks. Right click the empty channel, go to create group. Let's call this, there are presets. If you click this drop down on PC, it automatically has a drop down for you guys. Let's just click on where it says vocal. So now all these will have the same color and they'll be labeled as vocal and they'll all be routed to this specific channel. Now, because I have it routed over here, okay, it'll do the routing for you. So if I click on this track, you'll see this little wire down here. This wire shows where the signal is actually going. So the signal is only going to this mixer channel, okay? This signal is only going to this group. This one only going there, and this one only going there. Now the group, the signal is going to what's called the master. So all these are going to the vocal, and the vocal's going to the master. An easier way to kind of understand that is, you know how like on Uber you have a final destination and you could add stops. So in the mixer, we're just adding stops before we get to the final destination, aka the master. Okay, so that's what we're doing. And we're riding an Uber with 5 tracks, aka 5 people called vocals. And now we can go to this vocal group and start adding our effects to this specific channel. So it saves a lot of resources. It makes it super organized. And we can also just check on everything once it starts building up in that specific channel. Okay, so another thing we want to do is understand the select. Again, is Control left click to highlight. If you want to jump around in the mixer and like select something way over here, you could hit Control Shift and individually select mixer channels and deselect them like that. So that's how you would grab multiple tracks and route them to whatever you guys need to do. All right, the next thing we're going to do is Shift left click, which I told you guys is how to rename it pretty quickly. It's a Shift left click. I don't really use that one, but I'm just showing you guys shortcuts. Nextly, we're going to go understand route to all and route, etc. Routing. So let's say I have a sound. Let me find my drums. So my drums, let's say I want to send my drums to a parallel track. So we're going to get a little advanced here. So my drums are a group of other tracks. So all these tracks are going to the drum group. This group is going out to the master. What I can do is send this drum elsewhere. I could do it with any track. What we have to do is click on that desired starting track and then the destination. So I want to click over here to drums, left click to send a duplicate of the sound somewhere else. So now we're sending a duplicate over to channel 26. Now we could do stuff like add a compressor or whatever the thing is that you guys want to do on this parallel track. This is parallel processing for those who are trying to understand the concept here. I don't have time to explain how to mix right now, but if you guys wanted to do like a compressor on this track. And now we have the original plus the parallel signal going through that compressor. And they're adding up and then going out to the master. Now what you could do to like test out different effects, let's say you add some kind of quirky effect like reverb or delay or something like that. What we could do is let's add just Fruity Reverb 2. Fruity Reverb 2, here we go. We're gonna put it on wet level, turn the dry down. This is not what I would do with drums, I'm just showing you guys. So let's say you wanna hear how much reverb you have, but you can't really hear the effect. What you could do is click on your group, left click the up arrow at the bottom here for the master channel. So now you will only hear where we're sending it to, which is this effects channel here. Now here's a secret. If you guys group your tracks, you could hit Alt, right click on this button to solo the entire group. Before you would have to right click and left click to unlock every single channel. But now we can just hit Alt, right click, and it will unlock the entire group that's routed to a specific channel. So that saves a lot of time, especially when you guys organize your mixer. So now what we're hearing is just the reverb. We're not hearing the drum signal, we're just hearing the reverb. Now if I left click to turn this off, we're not hearing any drum signal because there's no wiring anywhere. So if I left click and send this back to the reverb, we're gonna hear the reverb. If I left click, send it to the master, we're gonna hear the drums just as is. Okay, so that is how we control what we actually hear. Now there are built-in kind of preset functions. So if I left click where it says drums and I right click the up arrow and I route to this track, that's essentially just left clicking this up arrow. Okay, it's just named. So it's the same exact thing that we did. Now, if I right click while I'm highlighted on the drums, if I say I don't want reverb anymore, I just want to go straight out, we can right click, route to this track only. Now, all it's doing is just taking off the wire from here to here. You could manually do this as well. So you could just left click to turn that back on or turn it off. So that's how routing works. You just left click to send signals somewhere. And if you want to hear an effect soloed, you just turn off the master output by left clicking like that. And then make sure the other track is sent to, and then you can hear all the effects that way. Okay, so that's how we do routing in the mixer for the most part. And again, when you're sending tracks, channels to different mixer slots, whatever you want to call it, okay, you're sending the signal, you're duplicating the signal. So if I send it like this to all these channels, I'm basically duplicating the sound, what, 7 times? Okay, so we could do different things with those duplications of that sound. Now, for those who want to get more advanced, I have different videos about this because I don't have time to explain sidechain compression right now. But if you want to sidechain to a track, essentially what we're doing is sending a signal to a channel and then we're turning down the output volume, but we're still sending the signal to that channel. This is what a sidechain technically is doing in FL Studio. But what you could also do is click on the track. Let's say this is your kick and you want to sidechain your bass. You're going to right click, sidechain to this track, or sidechain to this track only, depending on how you want it to route it. And again, it's doing that thing where we're sending it over here as a duplicate. But the difference is this green knob is all the way down. Okay, so that's what sidechaining is underneath. So I know that was a lot. You guys will see me use that in different tutorials and stuff. All right, now let's talk about separators. So when you group sounds, it will automatically place these little vertical separators, which make it visually easier to see your groups. You can now the weird part is that the separators only occur on the left side of a channel. So if I right click this channel here and I turn off the separator, it gets rid of that little black bar. If I right click, go back to separator, it adds it back. But if I right click over here and I do separator, it's going to add a separator to the left. Okay, so we need to go to this channel, which is not in the group, and right click and make a separator. Okay, so that's what these little vertical bars are. They're called separators. I don't really use all the visual cues in FL outside of groups. when I'm mixing. So that's what the separator does. Now there's also some features you guys might not know. If you click this button that says view extra volume and stereo properties, you guys will see, let me unmute all these tracks. You guys will see these other buttons show up. So it says reverse polarity, swap left and right channels, and our merge. It says stereo separation. So when you pull this to the left, it widens out that channel only if it has information on the stereo field, the left and the right. If it does not have information on the left and the right, it's not widening anything. If you have a kick that is mono and you pull this to the left thinking you're going to make it wider, it's not doing anything. Okay. But you can make stereo information more mono by pulling this to the right. So if something's a little too wide, you just want to quickly make it more narrow. We can do that right here. We can do the opposite. Now keep in mind that when you widen stuff and separate it, it messes with the phase a little bit. Doing it this way. Some common things you might do with the flip polarity switch is flip the polarity of the kick. So this is this icon. Just to see if your kick knocks a little bit more. Usually the kick and the bass, we flip the polarity of those because they clash in the lower frequencies. You don't need to know what that is. Now swap left and right is just simply if you have something on the left side, you want to pan right, you just click this button. So when I was sampling and remaking Eminem's track, he had a sample that they actually swapped left and right on the sample. So this is, I rarely use it, but it was used in an Eminem track some time ago. So they definitely use that technique, but it's only for certain cases. Okay, so we talked about signal flow. So I'll be short about this, guys, because it's a lot to teach you guys, but I don't want to go into a mixing masterclass right now. How FL Studio works, it starts from the actual track itself. So if you turn up the fader, let's talk about our kick, for example. The fader is the last thing in this signal chain, okay? So if I turn up the volume here, it's just turning up the volume of everything else that I did. But let's say I have, let me load up, I'm gonna be exaggerative here and add, let's do like a fruity wave shaper, okay, to demonstrate this. So we're gonna pull the mix level up. I'm not gonna mess with the pre, and we're just gonna solo the kick. To test our signal flow, if I turn up this fader, if this fader were pre this plugin, that would mean if I turn up the fader, we would hear more crunching inside the plugin. So we should not hear more crunch if I turn this fader up. We're just turning up the output volume. So it's just the same effect, but turned up in volume. Okay, now if we wanted more of this effect, more crunch, we would have to go to something before the plugin. Now inside the plugin, it has a preamp that you guys could use, but let's say you didn't have a preamp. What we would need to do is go find the kick, which is right here. And in FL Studio, I think 21.3 and higher, or 21.23 beta, I forget the exact number, they've added these clip gain features. So now if I want to turn the volume up going into the Fruity Wave Shaper, we can use this clip gain right here. And now we should hear more crunch if I turn this up. Because this is pre, okay? This is the preamp, or the pre, I'll say, the fader. Now what we could do is turn the fader down and crank this up even more. Now I'm gonna turn this up really loudly so we can hear the crunch. So you guys hear that crunchy sound? That crunchy sound was not happening when I used the fader in the mixer. So what I'm telling you guys is that it goes sound before, bunch of plugins, sound after, okay? So sound after is the fader. Sound after is all these little buttons on here, and I don't know where this EQ fits in the chain, but I'm pretty sure it's after everything here. The way the mixer works is that effects work from top to bottom. But before we even get to the effects, you know, sound starts with the clip itself, the sound itself. If I double click in here, there's also a volume adjustment under the wrench tool. You could turn the volume up this way as well. Okay, so this is where the sound starts. Most people want to turn up their sounds in the mixer, but most of the time where you want to turn your sounds up is in the channel rack or just straight in the playlist like I just showed you guys, because this is what will crank up the volume going into the plugins, which creates a different type of sound depending on how you guys are mixing. So using the fader is only turning up or down every effect that you've already created. Okay, so it's not going to enhance the effects. It's just turning up the output volume of the effects that you already had. Hopefully I'm making sense there. In practice, you guys will understand that more, but that's the most commonplace scenario I can think of, is like running a kick through a wave shaper or some kind of saturation. There's the volume before the saturator, which if we turn that up, the saturator is going to work harder and harder, which you guys just heard by me using that clip gain. So the louder I turn this up using clip gain, the more crunch we're going to get with the plugin. Now, we're not going to get more crunch if I just go to the fader and turn it up, because all that's doing is just turning up the volume of whatever's happening. Okay, so hopefully you guys understand that's called signal flow. It means where does the sound start, what happens to that sound, and then how does the sound end. So again, a sound starts with the clip itself, or it starts with the plugin itself, then it goes to the mixer where the plugins work top to bottom, then it goes to this thing, I believe, and I believe the fader is next. I don't know the exact order of EQ and fader, but the fader is last, okay, in this chain. So think of the fader as if it were a plugin, like a gain plugin. It's the thing that comes last in this chain of things. Okay, so that's very important because order of effects does matter. Now, next, let's talk about recording. I don't want to make this too deep about recording. I have a video on how to record in FL Studio. I'm just going to show you guys quick little things. In the mixer, you could click this little drop down, so select your input. Now, to even have inputs and outputs, you need to go to your options, go to audio settings. We're going to select our audio interface here. Once you have your audio interface set up, then you guys will have inputs and outputs. If you don't have an audio interface, you're going to be limited to your options based on what you choose. I have videos on that. Just type in how to record FL Studio BusyWorks Beats. Okay, so that is the first step. Now, the second step is going to our mixer and arming the mixer to have an input. So we need to click here and select the input. So my microphone is a mono source, okay? Most mics are mono. You're not gonna be recording a stereo mic unless you have like an overhead drum set that has one of those cross head stereo mics like that. Rarely are you gonna record stereo. If you guys do record synthesizers, then you would record the stereo, because your synthesizer usually has a left and a right input, okay? So then you would use stereo. For microphones and stuff, you would use mono, or else if you click on stereo and you click on your microphone, it's going to be panned to the left. Okay, so we're going to go to mono, which is our microphone. Now you guys are going to hear a double of my voice. All right, so we're going to hit yes. Now basically you can't hear anything because this is muted. So now you guys are going to hear a double of my voice. What I could do is turn the output of this off just by clicking on this track and then clicking the up arrow. So now I'm not hearing myself. So if you guys have issues where FL Studio, you're recording and you keep hearing that little latency, you guys can turn off the output monitoring so that you're not hearing yourself. Again, so it's the same thing we did with the drums. We could click that back on, or we could hear ourselves only through a compressor or reverb by clicking it over here and adding an effect. So let's say I wanted some kind of reverb. I would turn this to wet. Check. Okay, so now I'm only hearing my voice through reverb. You guys are hearing my tutorial voice and the voice in FL, but I would only be hearing my voice through reverb. So now I can preview what it sounds like when I talk through reverb. Okay, so that's a way to do it. Now, what I didn't know, and I think I learned this from Sicky Beats, he made me realize there's a button right here. If you left click, this basically, let's say you have auto-tune and you don't want to hard boil auto-tune. Let's say you put on auto-tune and you have the wrong key and you didn't realize it till after you recorded. A way to kind of preserve your recording is click here, go to external input only. And then if you guys want to monitor, you could turn this to on, meaning that it's always on. You're going to always hear yourself. But if you have it when armed, only when this little red dot is turned on down here are you going to hear yourself. So if I turn that off, you're not going to see any signal. If I click it, you're going to see signal. So that's what when armed means, armed for recording. And if you click here to on, that means no matter if this red button's on or not, I'm going to hear myself. Now that's important for people who use monitors as their setup. They don't want to have feedback. That's a little more complex. And then again, you could just turn monitoring off, which I would not recommend. So it doesn't matter, but I doubt you guys would do it that way. So anyhow, if you click the drop down, this is telling us where are we going to record the audio. Are we going to record it after the effects? Are we going to record it before the EQ, before the level panning, and before, or are we going to record it before all this stuff? I would just highly recommend you guys record external input only. Okay, because what happens is if I have a bunch of plugins and I'm recording and I want to change something later, I can go back and change it. Whereas if I record post EQ, I'm recording everything, and if I want to go back and change something, I can't. Okay, so this is, in my opinion, the best way to do it. So I covered that in my recording video. I don't want to waste time covering that too much. So what else do I have to show you guys? I have a whole list of stuff. So let's create a submix for this mix. I don't know. I added so many sounds. So let's say you want to try out different stereo mixes or mix buses. So before we get into the next step, how to disarm your microphone. So let's say you forgot your microphone was still armed. You click the drop down and go to none. So that way you're not hearing yourself as you're mixing or whatever you guys are doing. All right, so let's say we want to create a submix. I already have everything kind of packed into groups, so this will save a lot more time. I'm going to hit Control Shift left click to highlight all my groups here, my instruments, my vocals, my drums, and my bass. And I want to create a submix. And let me show you guys a great thing to know. If you click on an empty channel here, you can hit Alt left to move this around the mixer. So this is really handy for reorganizing the mixer and just moving stuff where you want it. Alt left and Alt right will move the stuff left or right in the mixer. Now let's highlight these groups, hit Control Shift left click, find each group like the bass, etc., the drums, the vocals, and we want to route it to this submix. So we're going to right click and route all of these to this track only. So now we're not hearing a double in volume from all these sounds that would be going to the master. So all these groups are now routed to this channel. Okay, now this channel does not have an output. So right now we're not hearing anything. So we need to left click to send this channel to the master. So now I can mix all these things on this subgroup. We're going to right click, rename this. Let's call it like submix. All right. And then here we can start adding effects. Now I'm not going to sit here and mix. That would take up too much time. But let's say we want to saturate the sound or something like this. We want to hear what this sounds like. We could do different submixes and kind of test them against each other. So this is a fun way to mix before you get to the mastering channel, because the mastering channel is the final destination. So there's nothing you can really change after you do mastering. Meaning once you run out of 10 slots on the effects here, you're out of slots on the master channel. But a submix, you could send this to a different channel and mix even more. That's more advanced. Anyhow, so let's say you want to try out saturation. And you're like, I wonder what this sounds like. And let's say you want a submix for only compression. So let's create two submixes. Let's grab an empty channel, hit Alt left, so we pull it all the way to the left. And let's name this one submix 2. Okay, now you may believe that because we routed to this track only that we can't route it to over here, but that's false. So if we click on each group, we can mute the original submix, and then we can click on each group like the vocals and left click the up arrow. So now I'm sending the vocals to submix 2. Okay, let's go here. We're going to send that to submix 2. We're going to do our drums, submix 2. Now, because the submix is muted, we're going to turn the fader off just so we don't get any volume. Okay, so I'm sending these as a duplicate over to submix 2. Just left clicking the up arrow at the bottom. Don't forget to send your reverbs to each submix too. So now in this submix, we can compare what happens if we compress, for example. Okay, so on this one, I'm going to compress. Now I would not do these settings. Don't copy what I'm doing here. We're just literally just throwing on random settings here. So don't copy this at all. But let's say we want to compress only when the kick comes in or something. And now we're going to test, does our ear like the more saturated sound, or does it like the cleaner sound, but just with more dynamic? So what we could do is just right click. Now again, you could Alt right click to solo all of the things routed to this specific channel. So I'm hitting Alt right click so that we're muting the submix, but we can hear everything else. So this is the compressed sound. Okay, then we can hit Alt right click, and now we're hearing the harder saturated sound. Now it has more crunch, and then I ask myself, which one do I like more? I like the saturation. Now this this one's cleaner, we can hear a lot more stuff. Again, I'm hitting Alt right click. So then we can experiment to see which mix we actually like. So that's what a submix would be for, is seeing which like mix bus processing you guys like. That's more advanced, and we can't go into everything about mixing right now. Lastly, we're going to get into view styles. So if you click here, this will switch out different view styles. I have mine on compact too, but the newer versions have it on wide. I just don't like wide. It looks too like not like a real mixer to me. And then wide 3. So I keep mine on compact too. It just looks more visually appealing to me, but this is how FL used to be. So maybe I'm just used to FL looking like that. All right, so that's how you change your styles. Another thing you could do, if you're a sound designer, you want to render out a melody or a drum break or whatever, you can click on your drums, click in the top left, go to disc recording, and then render the selected tracks to wave. So this is how you can render one track without rendering the entire project. You could render out just this track. There's other ways to do it, but that's how you could do it from the mixer, okay? Nextly, to duplicate effects, which is very popular. So let's say you want your drum mix on a different channel. You could right click, go to File, go to Save Mixer Track State As, left click and drag it over here. So now it has the same name, the same effects. So whatever is routed to that channel will have the same exact processing as it did over here. So we do that more for like vocals or stuff that we want to process in the same exact way without having to pull up every single plugin one by one. So that's how you duplicate the effects. Now, if you don't want to duplicate an entire chain, we could just reset this by right clicking, hit E to reset. So let's say you only want one of the plugins from the chain and not the entire chain. You click the drop down, go to Save Preset As, left click and drag it over. Okay, and then it will add it here. Now, fun thing you could do in FL if you want to like make memes and like never show people your plugins, you could click the drop down and go to rename and then name this like BusyWorks Beats secret plugin. Even though they can't read the entire plugin name, you could kind of create memes out of this by putting random names here so people will never know your plugins. That's a pretty unique feature to FL Studio. And you could also rename channels just by right clicking, hit R, and you could change the color of it as well. And let's hit accept and then name it like test or whatever. So now this channel will be called test and it will have that color. Very simple. Lastly, we're going to talk about the old school FL Studio, how it had reverb and like stuff to the right, those 4 channels. So what we're going to do is select 4 empty channels. Doesn't matter which 4, just highlight any 4 channels that are empty, right click them, and then we're going to dock to the right. So now we're going to have these 4 like slots to the right. So what would these be used for? In Ableton, by default, you have delay and reverb. So we can kind of copy that same process. So I'm going to load up a reverb. We're going to make sure the effects are on wet level, not dry. And then we're going to send sounds over to that specific plugin. So let me show you guys what that would actually sound like. So let's send our instruments. Let's say we wanted the instruments to go to a reverb. We're going to click on the instruments group. Remember, we can send a duplicate to another track. So we're going to open up this track, make sure it's turned on. If this green thing's off, you're not going to hear it. So now these instruments are being sent as a duplicate over to this channel, and that channel is going to run through reverb. So now we can adjust this amount by left clicking and dragging this knob here. And you could also right click and automate the amount as well. So let's say I want heavy reverb only at the ends like this. I'm going to move this. So that way you get more dynamic performance. Those are the keys to the FL Studio mixer. If I missed something that you guys deem important, also I forgot to talk about the outputs. The inputs are up here. So this is your mic and your synthesizers. Now the outputs are for when you guys have outboard gear. If you're more advanced, you know, this is for you. You click here and these are your line outputs from your audio interface for if you guys send your sound out to like external monitoring or external outboard gear, whatever it is to process. You could also bring it back in. So you could send out a sound. Let's say it's your drums and you want to send it through the Zulu, for example. You would select your line outs. Now you have to do this from your audio interface. Your line outs have to actually go to the physical Zulu. Now from the Zulu, it would come back to your audio interface as a different input. So you could send the signal out, let's say line 1 and 2. I don't have anything going out of line 1 and 2, so it's not going to show up here. And then we would select the input. And whatever your input is for the Zulu, you would select that stereo input in this case, or mono input in this case. So that would be your specific input. Everybody's setup is different. There's no thing to memorize on that. Depends on how you guys have that set up. And then the signal will come back into FL Studio. That's for more advanced folks. I don't think I missed anything important about the mixer. Oh, one last thing, I guess. Some people use this. I don't use it at all. But if you click this icon to view waveforms, you can switch it from looking like this. Now also, if you hover over with your mouse in the top left, you'll see values. So if I hover over with my mouse, it tells me what dB I'm at. And I kind of visually see where I'm hitting. It says -4. Also, you can view waveforms, which I wouldn't recommend because now we don't get that value in the top left. So that's why I don't do this. Just kind of eyeballing. So that's not my workflow. Trying to think, is there anything else I could have forgotten about? It probably is, but I'm being honest, that's how we use the mixer. Anything else beyond that point is just kind of extra. If you want to turn off plugins, you could just click this green icon right here. That turns plugins on and off. You could also turn the mix level, meaning like the amount of the effect. You could turn that down and automate this as well by right clicking to create an automation clip. Very helpful for like melodies and stuff. You could turn that up and down. I haven't found a way to do this in other DAWs, so that's pretty unique to FL Studio. Okay, so you guys can adjust the amount of the effect that you guys want on that specific sound. I don't use this EQ. Some people may, but I don't. I really can't think of anything else I forgot about in this specific mixer. So I don't want to make this like an hour video, guys. That's how I mix in the mixer. So if I left something out, if you're still confused, just go to busyworksbeats.com. We have a free FL Studio 21 course, which will guide you into the next FL as well. But you need to learn the foundations of FL Studio. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio to get started for free. And I'll leave the link below to the FL Studio course. Peace out, guys.